Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 295. My name is NBZ, and I am here again, despite circumstances of, Skype destroying itself. In fact, apparently
it's
Skype...
been gommaged.
It's been gommaged, it has. But the thing is, apparently it's not going until the 5th of May, so technically we could use it, but we told ourselves it was dead to us already, alright? We RIP'd Skype, and so we can't go back to that graveyard. In fact, I tried to open it today, and to see if it was working, and it just froze, and I couldn't click on anything.
Oh, God.
So even though they say it's 5th of May that they're killing it, might as well be dead right now because it's not even doing anything.
Look, we're comfortable. We have been comfortable in our hometown of Lumiere with Skype, and now we're making the expedition across the sea into unknown territory to find a new platform.
Exactly, and we're starting in the nice village of Discord, which I think, let's be honest, we'll probably just end up here by the end of this journey.
It's working nicely so far. We're both on the app, and the lag is minimal.
Right, so Bally had a bit of a nightmare situation trying to record on Discord previously with a guest, and that seemed to that's why he was very not sure about using it. But he was on the browser before, which, to be fair, I also am on the browser. Also, I'm someone who uses Slack on the browser. I use Discord on the browser. I use everything on the browser because I'm just I want my tabs. I want to just have it all in one place.
Quite easy to just switch between them. I get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then all my colleagues make fun of me for having Slack on the browser, and I'm like, well, now I have to do the app because Slack was stopped supporting Google Chrome for some reason recently. They're like, oh, we're not doing that anymore. And I was like, that's some bullshit. So yeah, now I've downloaded the app for Slack. But also, because every morning we use Discord for going through video game stuff, I always, for some reason, am delayed on Discord when I'm talking to people. And so I was like, well, let me just download the app and see how it is. And it fixed every problem. The app was like, oh, so, okay, this is how it's supposed to work. This is how it is supposed to sound. And I no longer suffer from that lag anymore, which is good. And so now I have the knowledge, and now I've passed it on to Bally, and seems so far like it's okay.
Fingers crossed.
We tested stuff. We've gone loud and quiet, and our bars haven't moved in terms of our audio, which it did. The fucking Google Meet for bonus bits last time did do it, and that was some bullshit. So anyway, I imagine we'll probably just use Discord, because every time we record, it's like, oh, let's just have something that we don't have to have hassle with. So I think that might end up being the case. But yeah, we'll try and go on a bit of a journey and find some other stuff. But anyway, hello, welcome. It is currently the 1st of May as of recording, and London has decided that this is summer now. Actually you flipped over to May, and all of a sudden it's 29 degrees outside. So
it's the hottest start to May ever in the UK
in history. Yeah. And guess what, that's going to continue being the case for the rest of all time, because we're destroying our planet. So great stuff. Good things going on there. And fortunately I was in the office today because just in the office, and the benefit of that is that it was air conditioned all day, and I was like, oh, it's it's a regular day. I was in long trousers, black long trousers as well, and I was there, and I was like, oh yeah. I didn't even think about the temperature or the weather, because this morning it was
Do you never check weather before going out?
No. This leads to funny situations, such as me and my sister went to London one day a couple of years ago, and I think it was September, and I'm just still in summer mindset, so I just wore shorts and sandals, and it was fucking freezing. And I just walk out the house, and there's this famous picture of me standing by the water that my sister sent to my parents, and she's like, look at this fucking idiot, he's dressed in shorts on a cold day. So yeah, I very rarely check any of that stuff. I just walk into whatever it is, and whatever happens, and sometimes it means I'm fucking freezing, sometimes it means I'm too hot, I'm carrying around a jacket for no good reason, but that's just the way I am.
I think getting rained on at Gamescom is another good shout for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that wasn't really in my control, if I'm honest. That was
you could have brought an umbrella or a waterproof.
Look, it was August, it was nice, it was sunny outside. Never did I think that on my meeting with Nintendo I'd get rained on. So anyway, that was a whole thing. But anyway, it means that I've got a fan shot at my crotch right now, trying to cool me down as we record. It's the worst thing about podcasting in a room with a hot PC in these kind of temperatures is it's fucking so ridiculous and agonizing.
You're giving it all this in winter, saying, "Oh, I don't need to turn the heating on. Got my PC. It heats the room up nicely."
And then there's the nasty dark side of it, which is right now. But yeah, it means that if we want to keep cool when recording a podcast, I always have to find a weird position for the fan to be in so that it doesn't interfere too much with the microphone quality. But yeah, hopefully that's all okay.
Well, I'm up here in Edinburgh, and it's cold. Opening a window cools the house right down. Totally fine. All good.
Rude, frankly. But yeah, that's great. That's good for you. But yeah, we'll get through it. We'll get through the summer months, and it'll all be fine, I'm sure. But before we get through the summer months, we've got to get through this episode of a podcast. What do you know? Bally, would you like to tell us what we're going to talk about on this fine show today?
For the first segment, we're both going to be talking about a game we have been playing that we like quite a bit, that we will get to very shortly. And then for the second segment, we're going to do a couple of listener emails.
Absolutely. So, Bally, we've been playing a brand new video game, not on a Nintendo console, though I highly suspect this is going to be a shoe-in for Switch 2 when Switch 2 releases later in the year, and hopefully these guys have an expert porting team on the case to get it to work. We've been playing a game called Clair Obscur Expedition 33, a French game from the studio Sandfall Interactive, new studio formed from ex-Ubisoft developers, published by Kepler, and it came out. And before it came out, it actually got a little bit overshadowed by Microsoft being like, hey, or Bethesda, I should say, putting out Oblivion remastered, like literally the day before, or like a couple of days before.
But certainly within my circles, Clair Obscur is winning that battle for like coverage.
For sure,
so
yes.
I'm interested if that is happening in the mainstream as well or not.
It's not, because if you look at the numbers on Steam, no, it's not to say Clair Obscur has failed, because it certainly hasn't. It's been wildly successful. But yeah, the numbers on Steam for Oblivion are higher than it. Not much higher, to be fair, but definitely higher. I think Microsoft said 4 million players, but they've included Game Pass numbers in that. So Expedition 33 so far has said 100 million, that'd be insane. 1 million sales, but that doesn't include Game Pass
Which
players.
Is pretty great, to be honest. Like
it's not just pretty great, it's fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
Like for context, Balatro sold 1 million in a month, and this has done it in 3 days.
Wow.
So the level to which this is broken through is pretty staggering, I have to say. Yeah, and very well deserved. So yeah, this game was announced last year at Xbox's press conference at their thing, not E3 anymore, SGF, and a lot of people were interested because it kind of presented like it's going to be a pretty kind of third-person action game, and then they showed combat and it was turn-based, and people suddenly were like, oh, that's interesting. That's usually not what you see from a game that has this kind of fidelity to it. So definitely turned a few heads, and I in particular had my head turned because 2 years prior to that trailer going live, I had played a build of this game called Expedition 33.
How quickly do you recognize a game when you've played the build previously? Is it instant, or is it like, oh my god, does it take like 10 seconds, 20 seconds? What we're talking here?
I think it depends on the game and how much I played it, and like how much I remember about it. These days, it's less so. For basically, I'm less directly on kind of build reviews and discovery stuff. So there's things I recognize, but a lot of the things coming through now, like Blueprint, for example, another one that I'd played, so those have more recognition to me because I played them a couple of years ago or whatever while they were still in development, and because that was my main focus then, I also have, I think, stronger memories tied to stuff back then, because like I just first starting in doing this stuff, and I think naturally that happens. Like Loddlenaut, the game that I talked about on our show a few months ago that I played earlier this year, that was one of the first games that I assessed, and because it was like one of the first games I assessed, I had a lot of strong like remembering, like memories around it basically. This one was pretty instant because I remember when I first played the build, it was a really instant, like interesting hook of like, they were like, okay, so they give you the story document or whatever, and they're like, okay, so there's a world where every year this number gets painted and people of a certain age die, and so it's just from a premise standpoint, immediately I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And the big 33 in the sky they show in that trailer, it's pretty much exactly the same from like that original pitch that I had, and so when I saw that number, I was like, Oh fuck! It's that game.
But now you're 33 years old. You weren't when you previously played this.
Well, that's the thing I was going to bring up talking about this game is we're both 33, which is a really interesting.
So we must be the exact demographic they're aiming at is the 33-year-olds.
Yeah, perfect.
Boom, there you go.
Perfect. They're like, if you're that age, imagine you're about to die now. Would you be happy? You know.
I feel like Ben Hansen on MinMax was having like this existential dread hit him that his life was finite and that he needed it was really affecting him in a way that I was surprised.
Yeah. Yes. But anyway, yes. So I did. I played an early build of this a couple of years ago, 3 years ago at this point, and it definitely has not changed significantly in terms of the premise and in terms of the combat and everything. It's actually quite similar, but like visually, fidelity-wise, oh boy, is there a world of difference. It shows you how much 3 years of game development can take, because obviously that original build was much jankier and much less high fidelity and all that. So it still had the art design and the world design and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, this game's fucking gorgeous. Holy shit, like it is a really impressive effort for such a small team on just a pure fidelity level. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that kind of gave it a bit of push into the limelight was, hey, this game looks AAA, but it's not. It's made by a really small team. So anyway, so that was announced last year, and it has had a lot of marketing. Like, it's been in a bunch of different showcases, lots of different trailers. It's been pushed pretty heavily. Press have previewed it, and I was interested. I was very curious about it because it is my genre wheelhouse. I do like big, meaty RPGs, especially if they have kind of an interesting twist on them, an interesting hook. And the reviews dropped, I think, the day after Oblivion came out, and it was like across the board just praise. This is the highest reviewed game of the year so far. I think it has like a 92, 93 on Metacritic. It is pretty like universally beloved from everybody, and it also now has like a incredibly high user score on Metacritic as well, and OpenCritic also.
Studio's first game as well.
Yeah, first game from them. Like I said, ex-Ubisoft, so they came from a AAA background, but very much a brand new game, brand new studio, and so I was like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll check this out, right? I will. I was interested anyway because I was kind of invested from having known from before.
And so Game Pass makes it an easy. It
was on Game Pass, so I was like, so I downloaded it that evening and I played it for about 2 hours. I actually played it for 4 hours, but 2 hours is important because 2 hours into this video game, I texted Bally and I was like, I'm so sorry to do this to you. You have to play this video game right now.
You had to sound the Horn of Gondor, and this happens occasionally where MBZ just messages me like, Bally, this is the one. You need to do this. I should say my context for whether I was going to play this or not was because I dip in and out of Game Pass at the moment, so I bought a month of Game Pass and my intention was to play South of Midnight and enjoyed that, and then to start Blueprints, and then if I was enjoying Blueprints, I was going to pay for another month of Blueprints and then probably beat that game, and that was going to be my month or 2 months of Game Pass. When reviews dropped for this, I was like, right, well, I would like to play this game. But I think my brain was vaguely thinking, I'll probably play Blueprints first, and then the Switch 2 is probably going to drop in June, obviously, and then I'll put it on like priority list for like the end of the year, or not end of the year, but like second half of the year, and then I'll play it, and then MBZ can play it in the meantime. But then the Horn of Gondor went off, and my phone's going off, and MBZ's like, you got to play this. And I have said this before to MBZ, like, I've not really clicked, and I've not played a ton to be honest, but there's never been like a 3D RPG that's less actiony, it's not kind of like a Witcher or Horizon or something but like an actual more turn-based traditional RPG. A more traditional, like, I mean, a lot of people have played, a Dragon Quest game or a traditional Final Fantasy, like 12 or 10, or like a Persona or something like that, or a Persona, right? And you've never really you've played a Xenoblade, which is not quite the same thing. I've played Xenoblade 1, had some issues with that, but I still really like that game. I played Xenoblade Chronicles X, didn't like that game as much. I got like 30 hours in. Loved Final Fantasy 7 Remake, absolutely loved it. Really liked Rebirth, but not as much as Remake. But none of these games were in that echelon of like my favorite 2D RPGs. For example, Octopath Traveler is like one of my favorite games of all time, and Octopath Traveler 2 especially, there's none of the 3D games I've played come anywhere near that. And I feel like you were saying to me, Bally, this could be the one. Like, this could be and another big selling point.
I pretty much immediately recognized, like, okay, this has the energy that I think Bally would like, and I think you're about to say it as well, but I was like, this is like a 3D Sea of Stars in some ways, in terms of the battle system. So.
No, definitely. And it's like almost exaggerated, where Sea of Stars, the timed bonuses are, like I said, bonuses, whereas this game, it's not a bonus, it's kind of how you survive.
You gotta do it. You've got to get good at that stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, this game was doing everything, ticking all the right boxes, and like Kind of Funny's review dropped, and most of them beat it in like 35 hours. I thought, wow, it's not even like, this game's not even crazy long. Like, it's not 80 hours plus like a lot of these other ones are.
Yeah, like it's a smartly paced and like well, put together 30-hour RPG, which I wish more of those existed, but they just don't, basically.
Exactly. And I was totally in on like the premise of the story from the trailer from last year, but it simply wasn't something that was on my radar. Like, so if someone in our team, in our Fantasy Critic drafted this in January, like, I wouldn't have recognized that Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was that game. That, with the cool story premise. But I remember it's a cool story premise. Oh, and there's turn-based combat, and that's really cool. Oh, and I think you mentioned to me at the time, MBZ, that you'd played a build of this game back then. So it was ticking all the boxes. You sent the message. I was already on Game Pass. I was 3 hours into Blueprint, so I can talk about that another time. I might get back to that game. But I was like, right, I've got to drop this game for now, and I've got to play this game. And
I just did a Phil Spencer on Bally. I made him drop Blueprint to play Expedition 33.
Right, exactly. And yeah, and I'm 9 hours in, and I am not disappointed in the slightest. This game is phenomenal so far. It's really ticking all the right boxes. I'm so in, and I've only played a fraction of what you've played, MBZ, but like I'm up to that first min-max deepest dive checkpoint, and I'm so impressed by what I've played so far.
Yeah, so I'm 35 hours in. I have done nothing else this week except work and play this video game. I am obsessed. I think it's fucking phenomenal. I'm in love with so many aspects of it. And if Nintendo don't pull a rabbit out of a hat, this is a clear front runner for my game of the year. I cannot stop gushing about it.
I think I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. I can't stop thinking. Like, I'm listening to the music like on my commute. Like, it is wormed its way into my entire being in a way that I didn't expect, but is very deserved. And I think there's lots of elements, and we kind of get into why. But I guess, like, talking about that story premise, I think. Yes. This game has a pretty strong opening in a few different ways, but
for a genre that typically has such a slow opening, generally speaking, like, I think this is up there with first couple of hours of like Last of Us Part 1. Like, it's that kind of impact that I kind of think of with a video game. Like, I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how much you knew about that going. Obviously you knew about like the premise of it, that people die when this number changes, but if you knew that was what was going to be happening at the beginning of the game, basically, when you kind of went into it.
I did, because I'd listened to at least enough reviews to know that premise before going in, okay. But I maybe didn't realize it was going to happen there and then, but so I knew like a little bit, but not a ton.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, that you essentially start off playing as this character Gustav, and you are basically going to what they call the Gommage. The Gommage is the event where the Paintress, who is essentially this kind of mythical being who like lives across the ocean, and you can see this giant pillar in the sky. The Paintress is like a giant woman who just like kind of sits there most of the year, and then at the end of the year she gets rid of the previous number and counts down to another number, essentially. And when that number changes, everybody who is that age or older instantly evaporates and dies, turns into petals essentially, and just blows away on the wind. And so yeah, you're essentially going to the Gommage for one of your exes. So Sophie, who's the character who is about to, she is 33, and so she is going to die when the number changes. I think immediately just like that setting and that world building brings up so many questions and just interesting ideas. Like, it's implied that Gustav and Sophie broke up because they disagreed on like the idea of bringing children into a world like this, that sort of thing, which I found very fascinating.
And it kind of, there have been, this is Expedition 33, so you immediately think, all right, it's a 33rd expedition, but it's actually not. It's the expedition that represents the number that the paintress has painted to. So in a year's time, from the start of when you see the paintress paint down to 33, in a year's time, she'll paint down to 32, and then everyone who is 33 will die. But that then implies that you find out that there have been, it started at 100.
Yes, the number was 100 at the very beginning, basically. Yeah. And the world kind of entered this state because of an event called the Fracture, is what they call it, where basically a bunch of weird, like, blue stuff kind of broke the world, and their city, Lumiere, is it's kind of an amalgamation of Paris, essentially. There's like a twisted Eiffel Tower, and it got separated from like the rest of the continent. And
that was 67 years ago, right? Is that?
Yes,
right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when that happened, and then soon after that event happened, the paintress appeared and started painting these numbers, going from 100 down every year.
And everyone obviously getting younger and younger and younger. So I think that's where the tension is at, is that being 33, we're not that many expeditions away from humans in Lumiere no longer being able to reproduce and continue surviving. So you're kind of in the final, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 kind of expeditions, arguably. So I'm just going to say that it's also implied that the expedition started with huge numbers going on them, and then none of them succeeded, and the numbers dwindled and dwindled and dwindled to the point where now, while yes, the expeditions do go out, they're almost just done this kind of like a tradition, almost like this traditional thing that they do every year just to cling on to a bit of hope. Because Gustave's sister speaks to you just before leaving Lumiere, and she's basically saying like, come on, this is all just for politics. Like, you know that you're going to die. Why are you doing this? Like, the idea, and that's the difference is, as Gustave is making the decision, do you stay in Lumiere and enjoy your last year of life, or do you go out on the expedition and know that you're probably going to die, but, you know, go down valiantly, or with the slim hope of defeating the paintress and ending this carnage that's going on? Like, it's that division. So, like, you get in the first 2 hours all these nuances and ways to think about the world that is just incredibly dark, incredibly hard to think about and kind of understand. Right, it's done in a way where if this was happening in real life, I think us as a human race would be doing something incredibly similar. Like, I don't think that they're a million miles off the pace. It's almost, in a really weird way, it kind of reminded me of aspects of the pandemic, and there would be it was like one day a week we'd all go to our windows and start, and this was in the UK, and there'd be like a round of applause for all health professionals in the UK, and like this was just like, oh, it's nice that we're celebrating health professionals, but at the same time, this is really morbid and kind of dark in a really depressing way. And this is obviously that times a million. This is nowhere near.
Oh God,
it's not the same, but it just kind of, we as a human race have our social constructs that we create that give us respite and make us feel better about ourselves, whether that's marriage or religion, or like there's a million other social constructs you could give as examples, but all of them have a role in tradition and propelling forward like how we get by day, and this is kind of their version of that. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's very weird, because like you have this whole ceremony essentially built around the idea of like, oh, this is the day I'm going to die. Like, I know what day it is, I know my age, and therefore I know exactly what day I'm going to disappear, essentially. So the fact that they have built an entire ceremony, like cultural kind of touch point around this very horrible thing is fascinating. I think it's just the world building that is done in that opening area is extremely strong. And then something that really threw me off was this character Maëlle, who's essentially like a little sister character to Gustave. She's not like related by blood or anything, but like has been taken in by him and his sister. And Gustave says to her, it's like, oh, why are you coming with us? You know, you got 9 more good years. And I was like, 9 years? Okay, so that should mean she's 24? And I was like, wait a second, no, because every year that it counts down, she will age up another year.
So she's like,
and so
16.
In fact, she's a teenager. She's basically 16 years old. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, holy shit. She's like a basically a child wanting to go on this this thing, but clearly like would rather do that than live this kind of life with, you know, no connections and anything in Lumiere for however much longer. So anyway, yeah, she goes on the expedition with you, but yeah, it's a strong opening, and very much sets up the world, and also just gives you a good understanding of what's going on. And yeah, I think, you know, it's very strong narratively the whole way through. There's multiple wild things happening. I'm very excited. Basically, I'm just waiting, Valley, for you to get to certain points and text me about it and be like, oh my god, what the fuck just happened?
So I've had like maybe a couple that I'm sure pale in comparison to some of the things you've seen, but even those couple have been like, okay, right, here we go.
There's lots of interesting stuff going on in this world, right? Because I think one of the immediate things that happens is that you realize, oh, there is someone who's old. Like, you see an old guy when you kind of take off on your journey, and a bunch of bad stuff happens as a result of that. But like, I think I was surprised by the immediacy of them being like, because I expected it in a way. I was like, okay, so the twist here is there's going to be some people who somehow survive the Gommage, and they are going to be old people, and the idea of old people in this world is like such a crazy thing. But the fact that they did it so early and revealed their hand, I was like, oh, there must be much more that they're going to do with this then, if that's what they, instead of holding it back as a reveal, they almost instantly do it. And so I think that's quite interesting, because I think it sets up the rest of the game for even more interesting stuff to happen.
Yeah, when you think that there's an obvious reveal, and then they get an obvious reveal out the way very quickly, because the story is so much more complex and interesting. Like I love that as a setup. You're right. Like it's great.
Absolutely. So you go on your adventure, and I think it's an interesting kind of like setup as an RPG. It's basically blending elements of the more modern Final Fantasy in terms of exploration, where, you know, 16 and 13 are, I think, maligned by some people in the fan base for being like, they're so linear, you walk down corridors, and if I'm honest, like, there's a lot of 13 inspiration here in terms of that. Like, the areas you go into, like your opening area, and you go to the floating waters, which is like that one you've seen in the trailers of like the kind of walking through this underwater area, and there's like bubbles.
Isn't it a great idea that you can enjoy all the beauty of underwater without swimming mechanics? Yeah,
it's great.
That's
it's
a great
amazing.
idea.
It's pretty brilliant. So those areas are essentially, to me, like kind of Final Fantasy 13 corridors. Now, I think the thing that's different about them is that they do have lots of like little offshoot paths that you can explore down, and every time that you explore, you'll find something good, like a helpful item to upgrade your characters or something of that effect. But I'm surprised that people are kind of, I don't know, I feel like maybe we've just been so far in the consciousness away from Final Fantasy 13 that new people don't even know about it, and therefore it's not going to be a touch point for them. But
did people want open world? Is that what they wanted? Or?
Yeah, I think back then when 13 was coming out, people were like, oh my god, the old Final Fantasies, you had a whole world to explore and everything. And I think the core difference here is that, yes, in those moments of kind of linear navigation, it's much more like a modern Final Fantasy, but they also have an overworld, right? And I think that's the big difference, is the overworld, the traditional classic idea of a JRPG is that overworld space that you can traverse and explore and navigate, and has the, you know, your characters are kind of bigger than they would be on an actual overworld, like real space, but it's just to create that sense of journey, that sense of exploration. And this game has that, and I think that's the thing that sets it apart, honestly, and that's the thing that makes it feel much closer to a Chrono Trigger or to an Earthbound, is that kind of overworld idea.
Yeah, I mean, what was the first game to do that style of overworld? Was it Dragon Quest, or was it Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI?
I think probably original Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior.
Right.
Which, like, Dragon Warrior, the original game, the whole game was overworld, essentially. Like, you would go down into some dungeons and stuff like that, but for the most part, it was just exploring a big open space. And I think, like, Final Fantasy VII is a great touch point of, you know, your big cloud walking around the overworld, and you go to different places, but it still has the, you know, you get into a spot and then that's where it changes perspective and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So
and you've still got your campsites and this kind of thing, but I think it does really clever stuff around potions, for example, where it's more Souls-like, it's more Elden Ring, it's more, you have your fixed number of potions and they will just replenish at every campsite. It's not like you're just building up 50,000 of this one potion that you famously never use MBZ, and then you might save them. I need to save these for the final boss.
You got to keep them for the final boss fight. And I had this recently. Like, I finished Trails in the Sky recently, and let me tell you, it was worth me saving those for that final boss. I used those. So yeah.
I like that it's just like, no, you can get these back every time you heal at a camp or whatever. So please use them, basically. And I've still not been using them enough,
No, there's no going into menus and clicking the heal button. Like Lune, one of the characters, has a heal ability, and I was like, oh, how do I get to her menu to heal people? And it's like, you don't. You basically have a resource, which is like this flask, essentially. And when you use that flask, it heals everybody, no matter, like, to maximum, no matter what health they're at. And so it creates this interesting tension of, like, do I want to use this yet? Or do I want to wait until I take a bit more damage in a fight? Or maybe I want to wait until I get into a fight, then I heal someone in a fight, and then I can't heal them outside it. And, basically, because you can only replenish that by resting at a flag, and resting at a flag respawns enemies, like you were saying, in a Souls-like fashion, there's that kind of, like, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Because I don't want to respawn all the enemies while I'm still exploring this space type of idea. So it works really well, and I think it's a smart addition, and not the only Souls-like influence in this game. Like, there's a lot of stuff, and I think the enemy design and like general visual design of some of the world and some of the spaces is incredibly FromSoft inspired.
It's like Dark Souls with a huge French inspiration, but also its own unique look, which I think is a great combination.
Yeah, and there's a lot of later enemies that are like freaky and weird and unnerving, and I think if it wasn't a turn-based game, it would be the similar problem of me being like, oh, I don't want to boot this up and play it because I'm scared. That's what action games do to me, but turn-based games, because it's like that, I feel like I'm okay, even though there are some scary-looking enemies.
I was just thinking this. How many... can we call this game AAA? I don't know. Debatable. But my point is, how many AAA-looking RPGs that are 3D are strictly turn-based? You've got Persona, you've got Dragon Quest.
Yep.
What's the game Persona spun out of?
Shin Megami Tensei.
Does that count?
Yeah, I guess so. Yes, that is still turns.
I guess, and I wouldn't count like Remake and Xenoblade, for example.
No, they are all like hybrid systems, and they are evolved versions of a turn-based thing.
Exactly, and this is still evolved in its own way, but it's still strictly turn-based, right? So my point is, like, there's very few kind of AAA genres, games, JRPGs, that go for the full 3D, but still stick to turn-based, which I think is just so refreshing.
The one I would point to is Honkai Star Rail, which is, again, a big gacha game from the Genshin Impact people. A game that I put a lot of hours into, but Honkai Star Rail is a free-to-play game, right? And I think that, in all honesty, I think part of the success of Expedition 33 can be traced to Honkai Star Rail, because it is such a huge thing that has popularized turn-based again. Because I think turn-based, in like the last few years, has had a bit of a resurgence, a bit of a kind of like golden era of coming back because of a game like that putting it back on the map. I think a few years ago, a game like this may not have been as successful as it is today, but with the kind of changing tastes, I think that's had a difference.
Is there anyone who worked on Final Fantasy 16 playing this game thinking, do you know what? We should have gone turn-based.
It's really fascinating, because to me, this is another road Square Enix could have gone down, right? Like, I think that it's really interesting to look at the 7 Remake series and to look at this and be like, these are two sides of the same coin, right? Like, Sandfall decided, let's go turn-based, but let's put action in our turn-based.
Yeah.
Where Square Enix decided, let's go action, but let's put turn-based in our action.
So that's another great point. Like, how many games introduced action into their turn-based? Obviously, you got Sea of Stars, which bases itself very heavily with that aspect on Paper Mario and the Mario and Luigi series.
Exactly.
What other turn-based games include action in their combat?
Yeah, like it's hard to think of many more. You're right. Like, it is. I think it is very much the Mario and Luigi RPG series that is the one who has popularized it. Obviously, you obviously have like games inspired by those, like Bug Fables that came out a few years ago. But that's like direct. That's very directly Paper Mario. I think the interesting thing about this is that it takes the Paper Mario interactive element of combat, but does it in a totally different setting and world and style than those games, and I think evolves it in a much more interesting way, because
so interesting.
In all honesty, I think that Paper Mario and those games, they're far more focused on actions taken offensively than defensive. Now, obviously, you can block and you can dodge and stuff like that, and I think Mario and Luigi games are actually a lot better for that in terms of the specific ways in which you can dodge, but this game makes defense far more interesting because it's not only dodging, but it is parrying as well, and that's the other FromSoft influence that's come in here.
Correct me if I'm wrong. In Sea of Stars, if you successfully counter or defend an attack, do you take 0 damage, but you don't then do any damage to the enemy?
I can't remember. I feel like parrying in Sea of Stars or like blocking in Sea of Stars, I think it reduces damage, but you still take damage, maybe?
You still take the damage, but it's reduced. See, I want to say you take 0 in Sea of Stars if you time it right, but you in Paper Mario, you take less. I can't remember.
Chip damage, essentially, yeah.
Either way, my point is that it's less of a big deal. It's more like a bonus, whereas this is fundamentally a huge part of the game. And I think what's so interesting is, let's compare it to me struggling with the final boss in Xenoblade 1, for example. And I think someone on MinMax pointed out, so I can't remember who it is. But they made the point that in most JRPGs, when you're struggling on a boss, you normally have 3 vague options. Your 3 vague options are go away and level up and come back, or re-strategize and fight the boss again, or fight the boss again and just hope for some better RNG. This game gives you basically a 4th option where you can fight the boss again and again and again without getting any stronger in terms of numbers like an JRPG, but you're getting better and better like Nine Souls, like Sekiro, because you are learning the timings of the parries and then you can overcome the boss. So for someone like me I'm always caught in between where I'm like, oh, I'm struggling on this boss. Do I go and grind and get the podcast going, or do I re-strategize and keep bashing my head against this boss? And I love with this game, I'm predicting that 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to say, right, let's try this boss again and again and again, and let's get better and better and better at the parries and the counters and take this boss down. And I absolutely love that about this game.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think it's also extremely satisfying because the way that they have built parries, they are so overpowered in the sense that they are hard to do, but when you nail them, you do so much fucking damage to enemies.
That's a great reward to incentivize you compared to the dodge, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it's why I've only been parrying the whole game. I don't dodge. Dodges for losers. So you gotta.
You don't dodge ever?
No, there's certain times I do.
Okay, but I agree. There's sometimes.
But for the most part, I try, even with like projectiles, which originally I was like, oh, you can only dodge these projectiles, right? Wrong. You can parry all projectiles as well. And I think this led me to a moment where I entered an area as I was exploring in like the kind of middle of Act 2. And it's like the snowy area like up north, and it's very kind of like, it seems like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be here. And I go into this fight with regular enemies, and there's 3 of these enemies, these like dancing kind of ice ladies, and they do this move that basically shoots 3 ice balls at you with very precise timing. And I died a few times, and I was like, okay. And then I started learning it, and I started memorizing the pattern, and eventually I could just do it without even thinking. Like, it was just there's a rhythm game nature to this where you learn the beat of it and you understand it and you just internalize it to the point where you can just, your body just muscle memory reacts to it, right? And that happened with this enemy. And so this enemy, they were so much higher level, so much faster than me, that they could take 9 turns without me taking a single turn. So basically I was doing and each turn, by the way, is 3 attacks per turn. So to get 1 successful attack parry against them, I have to do 3, 1, 2, 3, and then again 1, like 9 times in a row. And I sat here and I fought this fucking enemy that I didn't need to. It was a regular mob enemy, and I fought it for, I want to say, like 20 minutes. And slowly but surely, I eventually fucking beat that enemy.
Yeah.
And after doing that, I got an ability that was basically broke one of my characters. It gave him a speed stat that essentially made him faster than every other enemy that I encountered, and he had like 2 turns before any other enemy had 1. And the reward for doing that, like the fact I could do that I chose to, that I was persistent, I was like, no, fuck you, game, I'm gonna fight this thing that's probably 25 levels higher than me, but because I'm so good at parrying their attacks and learning their attacks, I'm gonna slowly kill them, and then get rewarded. Unbelievable feeling.
And you don't have this option in any other JRPG. Like, you can't you can't survive, because that's what you're ultimately doing. You're surviving and attacking. And that's the thing where at the start of the game, I was finding the parry a little tricky. I've definitely got the hang of it now. And I messaged you and you said, Bally, like, when you get to that first kind of pseudo open area, like, go explore, look for like the mini bosses or whatever, optional bosses. And these some of the early game like optional side bosses are really, really difficult. Like, they can one shot most of your characters most of the time.
Yes.
And I didn't mind that, because I was like, I'm just using this as a training ground, and like,
exactly,
I'm just going to train myself on this boss again and again and again to like get this parry right. And obviously you need to learn different parries for different enemies. But I finally like got the hang of the parry and the counter, and really got my head around, like you said, I can defeat enemies that are way tougher than I am, and get some pretty good loot as a result. And like, and most importantly, what I was trying to get out of the exercise was getting better at parrying to give myself more confidence for later bosses in the game. And like, I think I would recommend that to anyone playing this game, is if you are struggling on an enemy or a boss, don't try and get past the boss or skip the boss or do like early game. Just keep fighting that boss, get the timing right, and you will get better. I do think one issue the game has that a game like Rhythm Heaven fixes is it will tell you if your input is too late or too early. So I think often you can miss the counter or even the dodge, and it won't tell you whether which side you've missed it on, whether you're too early or too late. And that's a little frustrating, because you just would like that little note to tell you, so that you can work on being a bit quicker or a bit slower.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be super helpful. And yeah, it sometimes it's feeling it out. And I think there is a little bit of sound design that helps you. Like, there's definitely, if you listen to the audio, it does cue you in often for when you should be hitting the parry button, but it's a really tight window, you know, so it's hard to kind of nail it down and perfectly get it. But there's certain, you learn to look at certain animations and anticipate in a certain way, so that when it does land, you know that you're hitting it at the right time. I think the mime is a really good example. So you can fight a mime in the tutorial, and that's all well and good, and it's like, oh, kind of teaches you like, oh, okay, maybe I should be parrying. And then in the first area, when it's just Gustav and Lune, you come across a mime, and the mime is pretty fucking challenging when you first start. It's like doing these hand slap attacks. It's got this fucking hammer that hits you 4 times, and you're like, Jesus, man, this thing is kicking my ass. And also, it has the shield, and so you have to learn about breaking the enemies and like doing damage and using overcharge and all that sort of stuff. And that first mime fight is like, oh gosh, this is a challenging mini-boss. At this point, I see a mime, and I'm like rubbing my hands together, because I roll into that fight, and I never get hit. Like, I perfectly parry every hit that mime does, because I fought so many fucking mimes at this point that the hammer timing, the hand slap timing, I know it like it's ingrained into the rhythm of my body, right? Like, I fully understand it. And so I see a mime and I'm like, yeah, let me just steamroll this thing real quick, you know? It's very cool how you kind of have that escalation. And I think one of the great things about the game is you do have enemies that return, but I think the game is always introducing new ones, and so every area you get to is a fun kind of like challenge of learning the enemies of that area, and then by the end of the area you've mastered the enemies of that area, and so you can go into those fights and basically take no damage every time because you're powering perfectly and you have everything.
There's a real large range of variety for moves on enemies, and I think that's something about this game is there's a lot of variety almost everywhere you look. So in terms of each character's skill tree is pretty massive. We've not even talked about Pictos and Luminas, of which
Pictos and Luminas, Jesus.
There are insane numbers. Like, I just learned listening to MinMax that like they will actually boost stats. They're not just abilities. So I need to definitely rethink this.
That took me a lot longer than I should have. Like, I think I was maybe 15 hours in, and I was like, Oh.
Right.
Oh, shit. I didn't realize this.
I've just got my head around the Lumina aspect, let alone the fact that holding it's only the Pictos itself that will give you the stat, not the Lumina, right?
So let's do a quick explainer for people so they don't get
yeah.
completely lost. I think fundamentally it's not that complicated,
it's not too bad.
But
I don't think the game does an amazing job of explaining it, but it's also not too difficult to work out.
No, it's not awful. So I guess like one of the things you find in the world, one of the rewards you can get are these things called Pictos. Pictos are basically abilities. So like the way the battle system works is that you have an AP meter, which governs like what abilities you can use, right? So like
it feels very akin to loads of JRPGs, the kind of building up the points, like Octopath Traveler, for example.
Exactly.
Like I really like the battle system.
Yes, I think, again, the thing I really like about it is it minimizes the whole, like, between battle maintenance shit, in that in traditional JRPGs you have HP and you have MP, and it's like, I need potions to get my HP back, and I need mana, whatever, to get my MP back.
Totally.
And this game, just like Chained Echoes, doesn't have management of any of that stuff outside of battle, because AP just generates for the battle, and then it doesn't matter afterwards. Like it will always generate the same amount at the start of a fight, and it can change depending on stuff you equip, but because it's an in-battle resource only, you never worry about spending it, you never worry about going all out with big attacks. Anyway, AP is a thing that you use to govern some attacks. So, for example, you could find a Picto, and that Picto could be like +1 AP at the start of a fight. So if you equip that to Lune, when she starts, instead of having 3 AP, she would have 4 AP, which means that you could do a more powerful attack, because each attack is governed by how much AP it costs. You could do a more powerful attack straight away with her because you'd given her that Picto. So that Picto gives her that ability, and then if she fights in 4 battles with that Picto becomes a Lumina, and a Lumina then can be applied to anybody in your party. So if Lune levels it up and maxes it out, then Gustav can equip it as a Lumina.
Lumina's are almost like badge slots in like a Hollow Knight or something. Like you have a certain number of slots.
That's a great description.
And then you can attribute, say that Lumina you've just described is 2 slots. You might have Gustav at the start of the game has like 13 slots, so he's got 11 slots left to use for other Lumina, and just equip them, turn them on and off when you want.
Yeah, exactly. There's a great way to explain it, and I think that that basically is the meta of the game, is you slowly getting more Lumina as you get further and further, to the point where eventually, at this point, I have like 90 Lumina for all my characters, and so I can slot like 12 abilities to everybody.
It's like one of the most common pickups is a Picto. Like they're very common.
Yes, so the Pictos are common, and then Colors of Lumina are common, which is a resource you can use at your camp to increase the amount of Lumina that your characters can have. Every character gets more Lumina on level ups, but you can find Colors of Lumina, which is the kind of item to just increase it, essentially. So you can kind of min-max and do what you want with that stuff, but the difference is Gustav's one, so if he has the Lumina, he would only get the +1 AP. He wouldn't get, for example, the +300 health or the +20 defense that comes with it, right? So Lune, equipping the Picto, would have the stat gain from it, so all of her stats go up higher, and she gets the ability, but Gustav, equipping the Lumina, would only get the ability, basically. Right. So that's kind of the trade-off there, and it means that the Luminas are less powerful because they don't give you the stat boost, but you can equip loads of them, and you can use that to set up some crazy shit. For example, so I got a character, it's the 5th character, so I won't talk about them in specifics, but that character got a weapon, and that weapon was really interesting because it said, when you do a regular attack, if you just do a base attack, right, you gain AP from it. So like if you just hit an enemy with your regular normal attack, you get an AP, and that's how you kind of rejuvenate AP to use your like big abilities. The sword was basically, okay, it's a bit of a weaker sword, but you can do a regular attack and then you can go again. So you basically get 2 turns for every turn that you have. So I gave that character a Lumina, that basically said every time that I attack, I do 2 hits to my base attack. I was like, okay, so every time I attack, I get 2 hits instead. So I'm doing a base attack, and then I can get my my next ability off. And then I got a Lumina that said every hit of a base attack gives you +1 AP. And so with one attack, with my one base attack, this character gets 4 AP and then can go again. And so this character can now basically, from the beginning of a fight, do one attack and has 9 AP immediately and can do the most powerful move. And finding those synergies and having that stuff work together is fucking awesome, because you then start to like break the game and just do insane shit. And I think it's so smart and so cool, because like we talk about, I think, synergies a lot in things like deck builders, right? Where you're like, oh, I got that and that really works for my build because this comes together. And they're almost taking the synergy of like a deck builder and putting that into this Lumina and Picto system. And
it does feel like deck building when you're looking at them all and trying
right.
to
especially the number of them and
yeah.
how many things there are to mess around with. But yeah, like you said, I think it does need more menu optimization and organization, because they have specific wording for stuff. So like if it's energizing, that usually means like it gives you an AP back, or you know, like there's certain words they use to describe, like marking shot, it's like it's going to mark an enemy, or burning or whatever. Like they have specifics, but you never really know what it does until you hover over it to see what it says. And so better organization and prioritization of that stuff would be good, just to make it easier to hot swap stuff out. And also just like having loadouts as well would be really nice. It's like, oh, I want my L to have like a burning loadout, but then I also want her to have like a tanky defensive loadout. Like, and if I want to do that, I have to swap everything out and readjust and do it all again. And especially later in the game, you realize like, oh shit, I've accidentally had this character holding this really low level Pictos for ages. That's why they're dying all the time, because their defense is terrible because they haven't kept pace with everybody else. And so it's a complicated system, but in practice, it's actually okay, I find. So
I agree.
Yeah, I've not had too much trouble with it, but yeah, I don't know, Bal, if you have a go-to strategy with your characters so far, or anything that's really been working for you.
At the moment, it's fairly simple stuff. It's like getting marks off on character, on the enemies, right, and then making...
Oh, we haven't talked about the guns either yet, which is a whole nother layer.
Yeah, the guns and lining up. So you can, like I've got luminance turned on that like give you chances of marking enemies as well as burning enemies through the gun. So it's like, right, I've got Mael lined up with her, is it called Virtuoso stance? So yes, it's like, right, she's got 9 AP. This attack that I want to use, it costs 5 AP. So I've got 4 chances with this gun to mark this enemy. It's like 1, 2, 3. Oh, did it on the third. Right, the enemy's now marked. I won't hit them again. I'm going to use the special move with the Virtuoso stance. 200% damage. Boom, like loads of damage. And then, yeah, I think with Lune, like I'm struggling a little bit to always make sure, like, for example, her really good healing move requires earth tints, but then my one earth move is kind of rubbish, so I never end up having earth tints ready to heal loads, for example. So I'm kind of I'm synergizing a lot more with fire and ice with Lune, more so than like earth and healing and that kind of thing. So
got you.
Yeah, so I think there's like one burning move that Lune does, and then there's like a move she does that as long as the enemy is burning, then you can like charge up 4 AP, and then that fills up more tints. And then I've got like this, probably my strongest move so far, like it when you suck out like 4 tints, it'll almost always break the enemy, that kind of move that Lune's got. So
is it, you're talking about Mayhem, the one
Mayhem,
that explodes each of the stains? Yeah, yes. That's my go-to on her, is like get 4 slots and then use Mayhem to just burst them all,
and some of her moves charge up 2 stains and some charge up 1, so I'm trying to like be more conscious of like, okay, that one's got 2, I need to use that move more to get up to 4 quicker and that kind of thing. And then
yes, there's also like weapons that can do certain abilities. So I have Lune have a weapon that every time that she does fire damage, it adds a lightning stain as well. And so she has a fire move that hits everybody that gives me 2 fire stains, and when I do that, I also get a lightning stain, so I immediately have 3 stains. And so even though Mayhem's not going to do the maximum, I can do Mayhem straight away and get 3 bursts of Mayhem off of one turn. So yeah, the weapons have like things that can change the abilities. And so I got a weapon for Mael which reduced the cost of fire skills by 1 AP, so it's cheaper for her to use all her fire skills, like stuff like that. So you are really thinking about what weapons you want to use, and you can see basically each weapon has a new unlock at level 4, level 10, and level 20. So you can see like, oh, what is this weapon going to have at level 20, so I can plan for the future.
They take quite a lot of items and things to level up that much, though. So
yes,
you are you can get a little bit stuck, like, where I'm leveling up this one item because I don't have enough to level up both the items that I want to switch between, kind of thing. So
right. Yeah, for sure. And that gets better, I think, later on as you're able to buy those from merchants and things like that. But yeah, and we haven't even talked about the fact that, like, each character essentially has their own mechanics, right? Like, Lune's Stain stuff, Gustav's Overcharge, where he basically builds up a charge meter and then has a move that can expend it all at once. There's a ton of damage. And then Mael has this whole, she's a fencer essentially, and so she has stance changing, so you can go offensive, defensive, and like you were mentioning, Virtuoso, which is like does 200% damage. But people could build Mael as a tank and have her fully defensive the whole time and like sponging damage and like taking damage. There's abilities she has for taking damage for your allies and stuff, so you can put her in wildly different directions. And then the character you've just got on CL has like a wild set of abilities, which is like tarot cards essentially, where she throws tarot cards into enemies and then consumes the tarot cards. And then you have a sun and a moon charge, and if you have them both active, you go into Twilight, which increases her damage but also means that you can have more cards embedded in an enemy. And I have a weapon for her that essentially she takes double damage, but when she does a charge, it doubles the amount of charge. So instead of doing 5 tarot cards on the first hit, it does 10. And so you can double everything pretty much immediately. And it's risky because if she gets hit, she's dead immediately, essentially. But the amount of damage she outputs is fucking crazy. Like, the way that you can build these characters is so much fun, and like the levels of depth there with all these systems, like it and somehow it all feels so simple and seamless. Like, there's so many systems here, and they are all so well considered and work so beautifully together. It's incredibly fun, just the way it all works. So yeah.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, it's a hell of a video game.
It wasn't on my radar. It wasn't really. I just assumed it would get, I don't know, let's say 70s, low 80s. It'd be really, some people would find it great, but to get the unanimous support and really sell me so quick to try this thing and be so into it, it's very surprising for me, like, this year, and in a pleasing way. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just like on every kind of like artistic level, like there are so many moments playing this game where I just like, I'm like, or just like, I'm like, oh shit. Like, there's like when I got to the overworld map for the first time, and it has that like slight blur effect and like the tinted, like the colors of it. It's just like there's a toy-like even though your character models are actually the same character models, it's just the zoomed out nature of them makes them look toy-like in the world. And just running around it and getting that kind of classic RPG feel of like, ooh, I'm in the overworld now, and like I can, go and like fight enemies in the overworld if I want, or I can visit this random place and see if there's like an optional thing going on. Like, that was a wow moment. And then just so many moments of like visual splendor. I was telling you before this, but my screenshot folder is just like filled to the brim with just beautiful vistas and like amazing looking scenery and just like sights that just arrest you, You're just like, holy shit. And I'm gutted this game doesn't have a photo mode, and basically all the shots are the same composition of like the camera behind the character's back and just like looking at a view, basically, because I can't frame it any other way. So yeah, that's generally what I've been doing. But it's, yeah, I'm just in awe of so many of the locations you go to and the things they're inspired by, and the music. If this soundtrack doesn't win Best Soundtrack at the Game Awards, this industry is a fucking sham, frankly. It is incredible. And like the whole story of like how they found the composer is amazing as well. As like he was just like on a random forum, and Guillaume, the director, found like one post that he did and was like, hey, do you want to work on this game? And he's put together an all-timer soundtrack. Like I was telling you this, but there was a boss fight I did last night, and the music, the way that it starts, the way that music works, it's one of the most hype and like emotionally stirring things I've ever heard in a game. Like, it might be the best boss fight music I've ever heard in a game. It is staggering how it is integrated and how well it works. And I think this just leans into the idea, this is a very French game, right? It's the French developers, but they lean into it in so many ways, and they also like, they're not afraid of making fun of themselves. Like talking about the mimes, but one of the other aspects of the game is the costumes, right? You can get costumes, which is very fun, change what your character looks like. They look like that in cutscenes as well, and so you can, it's of course, it's a classic inspired JRPG, so there's swimsuit costumes, obviously, and you go to a beach location to get those, and that's a whole entire thing. It's very, very funny. But, like, you fight that first mime, and the thing that you get from being the mime is a costume that's just called Baguette. It's called Baguette, and the costume is literally Gustav wearing like a pinstripe t-shirt with 2 baguettes strapped to his back, and he's wearing sunglasses and a beret. And it's so fucking hilarious. Like, it's like they understand that. I think one of the reasons that people love classic JRPGs is not just like, oh, there's the amazing worlds and combat systems and stories. It was that willingness to be fun and weird, you know, like that goofy side of it that classic Final Fantasies embody. There's so much of that in that era of games of like, oh, here's this weird character and here's this strange scenario we're doing here, and like from the Gestrels, who are like basically this game's I wouldn't call them like a Chocobo or like Moogle equivalent, but like they're a fantasy race of this world and of this kind of like if they were to do more games in the Clair Obscur franchise, then Gestrels would be the thing you carry over to each game, right? Like those would be the kind of through line that makes this all work together. Like the fact they have those guys, and I spent like 45 minutes running around the Gestrel village talking to everybody.
It's a big village,
huge.
Yeah.
It's fucking massive, and like there's so many like funny, weird interactions there, and just like I think that ability to make fun of itself, and be like, yeah, we're French, we're gonna do a costume that's called Baguette, you know, like it's really good, and
there's a lot of French swearing, and even in the English-speaking dialogue, which is very funny.
Right, they kind of splatter it in there, like they have like characters talking in French and English simultaneously, like it's kind of spread out, and all the names are very French as well, obviously. But I think it's fucking incredible. I'm in love with it. I think it only gets better in many ways. Like there's definitely some parts where I was like, oh, maybe this is a little too long, like some of the areas and some of the amount of enemies and stuff, but that's also because I'm literally doing everything. Like I'm combing every area, I'm finding every little thing, and I'm fighting every enemy I won't move on with an area until I'm happy that I've cleaned it up properly and I've explored. I know some people are having issues with like wanting a mini map in those areas and stuff, and I don't know if you got lost in the Ancient Sanctuary, but that's like the red forest area before the Gestrel village.
Yeah, a little bit, but they kind of like want you to get lost because it's meant to be like the story beat a bit of finding the Gestrel village,
but so something I didn't realize, but people pointed out online, is that the path you're supposed to go is always lit by lanterns, and so I
did notice the lanterns later. Yes.
So if you want to go to the part that's going to take you further in the main quest, then you just go down that. But if you want to do side areas and just like find stuff, then you can like ignore where the lantern is and go the other spot and then come back to the lantern later and follow that afterwards. So and you know, and then there's the whole like world traverse, like you're very close, Bally, to getting your first thing that will help you traverse the world a bit quicker, essentially. Cool. And there's multiple parts of the world where you unlock a thing and you can now traverse differently, and it's so like there's a Metroidvania satisfaction to being like, oh, I've been looking at that area and I can't get to it because this thing's in the way. Oh, now I can go through it because I got this ability. Oh, that feels so good, you know. Like there's a really good satisfaction to getting new abilities in the traversal of the overworld as well. And like again, it follows the classic JRPG thing of like, well, you're eventually going to get a way to go across the water, and then eventually you'll be able to fly. And like the way they do that, I think, is quite unique. And you know, all that stuff put together is really well thought out and built into the world. But yeah, I don't know. I could just keep gushing about this game for hours and hours and honestly never stop. It's incredible. And yeah, I am basically at the end, and I'm kind of putting it off because I don't want to stop playing it. You know, like I'm like, oh, I could do some side stuff and just keep running around and then it won't end, you know, and then I won't have to be done with it. But yeah, very rare to get that feeling for me with a game. So I think that says quite a lot about its quality. Yeah, one last tidbit I want to leave everybody with, which is a fun little thing from the fact that I played that build years ago. So when I played it, they actually had a lot of the character names and stuff in place. So Lune was playable, Mael was playable, but there was a third character. It wasn't Gustav. It was a guy who I will describe as like a mix of Percy from Critical Role and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
So that character was called Noah. And so he had like short haircut, he had glasses, he kind of looked like a bit of a nerd basically, but he was like a nerd with like swords and like double daggers essentially. And
then they got Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, exactly. And then they decided, actually, we're going to make the character Gustav instead. He's going to look like Robert Pattinson, and we're going to get Charlie Cox to voice him. Voice acting, by the way, amazing across the board.
Really
I think,
good,
excellent performances. And obviously, they booked some top talent. They've got Andy Serkis in this game, Charlie Cox, and then Jennifer English from Baldur's Gate is Mael. And Ben Starr is in the game, but you've not met him yet. You'll come across him later. But he plays a pretty significant role. Yes, what I was saying, yeah, so basically in this old build, so there were those characters, Lune and Mael, but then there was this guy Noah, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, Noah. When I was looking back at it, I was like, I wonder like what was the reason for that, and I'm sure there were some reasons they had for like changing his name and his look and everything. But what you'll notice in the game is every time you get a new character, they have a starting weapon. And that starting weapon is basically named after their own character. So Lune's weapon is called Luna Rim. Ciel's weapon is called like Cia Rim or Ciel Rim or something. Who's Mael? Mael's is like Maelum or something like that. Her base weapon. If you go into Gustav's menu and you check his weapon, it's not called Gustavium or anything. It's called Noaram. And the only reason that that would be the case is because the previous incarnation of this character was called Noah. Wow. And so as a nice nod to the previous version of the game, before it went through changes, it seems like they decided to give Gustav's weapon the name of the character that he used to be, which is very cool, and something that when I realized it, I was like, wow, that's awesome, and I hope that they talk about that someday. But it's a cool little tidbit that you'd only know if you were someone like me who was very lucky to to play that early. So I thought that was extremely cool and a very fun little nod to the past of the game. So anyway, I think that's about enough out of us for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. We'll take a break here, and we'll be back after that, and we'll take some of your emails, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. S'en va dans l'oubli éternel, et Gustave dom guardiam, dilim didididilam, lutes sera dodilom, seram. Dim dim da 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 dim dim da 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 dim da di dum. Dim dim da 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 dim dim da 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 dim da di dum. Dans là-haut sera ravi, les toits à sur noir gris fera. Clair, obscur, trouble de rature, couvrera effet. Clair, obscur, bordé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle. Clair, obscur, double de rature, trouvera effet. Clair, obscur, bordé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle. Oh. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the second part of today's show. It's that time again. It is time for emails. If you would like to send an email into the show, please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That's ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We also have a channel in our Discord server. You can go on there, ask a question, post an email, a comment. They are all welcome. Our first email is from Capsule J, and this was actually on Discord. It says, Dear Bally and MBZ, on a recent podcast you answered a question about how you fit gaming into your busy lives. I have a related question. How do you keep up with the gaming zeitgeist, i.e. those games that you seemingly have to start on day one in order to participate in the discourse? Recent examples include South of Midnight, Blue Prince, and Clair Obscur. For most content creators, their solution is to just play the first 20% of a game and then drop it when the next new trendy thing comes out. However, you guys actually finish most of the games you cover on the podcast and find time to play some retro stuff too. What's your strategy for juggling it all without feeling overwhelmed or turning it into a chore? Regards, Capsule J from Georgia, USA. Well, I should roll this into the
next question because I think they link quite closely. I'll just quickly read this one. This is from Flapjackal on Discord. I've been in a video game funk lately where I haven't done more than boot up a game before I close it down and doom view YouTube videos for hours. So I figured I'd ask, how do you guys deal with it when you have a video game burnout?
Yeah. I appreciate that Capital J used capital T, capital D for the discourse.
The discourse.
Which I think is, the good way to frame it. It's an interesting one. I think it's a tricky one to handle. I think I've watched a lot of videos the last couple of years of like people being like, how to tackle your gaming backlog. Not because I need to, because I think I do a pretty good job of that, but just I find it interesting to see like how people are approaching it, right? And one of the things people bring up is like, how do you balance all the new games coming out with like old stuff that you want to get through and like play on your backlog? And I think it all often depends on like what is my actual interest in this? Like, do I want to play this before it becomes the discourse? That often is the case, and it's only rare examples, I think, for me, where the Zeitgeist gets something that I'm like, I wasn't intending to play this, but I will anyway. So I think there's a level of that, like, I think I wasn't intending on playing Blueprints, and when the Zeitgeist happened, it didn't really shift that for me. So, but Clair, Obscur, Expedition 33, I was like, I am interested in that, and then the Zeitgeist made me more likely to just play it immediately and stuff like that. And stuff like South of Midnight, where I was like, okay, yeah, I do want to check that out, and it's on Game Pass. Like, I think Game Pass is a good answer to this question, which is like, okay, it helps if a Zeitgeist thing is on that service, because then there's no barrier to entry for it, and so you can easily hop into it. But usually, if I'm hopping into...
I think length is a big barrier to entry as well.
Yeah, that's true.
More so for me than for you, perhaps, because I play roughly 380 to 400 hours a year, and you're probably up at 700 to 800-ish, depending on the year. Probably around,
I would say like 800 to 1,000.
800. So my point is, like, if you divide all the games you want to play into 800 to 1,000, it's a lot easier task for you to fit that in than often for me, especially this time in my life, where I'm trying to fit in all the games I want to play into, let's say, 400 hours. Like, it's a lot trickier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. But I do think that's I feel like with Zeitgeist games, I generally don't jump into something if I don't have the intention of finishing it. You know, like it's rare that I will drop something, and I think part of that is like, I know my taste so well at this point that it's easy for me to say, I will play this, I won't play that. And there's plenty of Zeitgeist games that I just ignore because I'm just not interested in them at the time, right? Like, I think that's definitely something that that happens a lot in like the AAA space. I tend to not play that many traditional AAA games. I'm usually playing obviously most Nintendo stuff because I want to, and obviously this podcast and everything. But usually if it's like a big game that everyone's like I don't know. I wouldn't. The thing is, there's lots of big AAA games, but I don't almost count them as Zeitgeist anymore, because like, you wouldn't count Star Wars Outlaws as a Zeitgeist game because like it just wasn't very good, or people didn't seem to like it very much. So it was a big game and lots of people were playing it, but I think the idea of Zeitgeist is slightly different in that it's more like the Critical Darling popped up and all of a sudden everybody had to kind of jump on it.
And it can be frustrating listening to the same 5 podcasts talk about the first 20% of that game, like you say, Capsule J, and it's like, right, well, I'm really into this game, but I'm not enjoying hearing 5 different podcasts talk about the same first 20% of the game. I that's why I like stuff like Min-Max Deepest Dive, because it's like, I like that deeper dive into the details of games I'm really into. And I appreciate why podcasts don't do that, because if you're not into a game and then they go quite deep on it, I can appreciate that's quite a turn off sometimes. So it's a tricky balance.
For sure. But I think in terms of like balancing it, I think, for me there's definitely I've gotten myself into positions where I have started a bunch of stuff and then I feel guilty for not having finished it, you know, like I recently finished Trails in the Sky, and that took me 2 years essentially from when I first started it to when I finished it, and it's not the ideal way to play a game like that. You kind of like want to have all the details and stuff fresh, and it makes it a little harder to keep track of. But in the end, I did get back to it and I did finish it, and that's kind of like it's a question often for me of like how to fit those back into playing schedule versus having it kind of sit in the background for a bit. Like I've done that a few times this year actually. Like the Bayonetta spin-off, Series of the Lost Demon. I started that a year ago and then didn't play it again for like 10 months, and then came back and was like, right, I'm going to finish this now. So sometimes things do get dropped for the Zeitgeist, but I think what always happens is I always come back to them, right? And like what Couch is talking about is a lot of people just play the first 20% of a game and then never touch it again, because all they do is play the first 20% of a game, basically, which I appreciate, and I get that that's some people's vibe, which is totally fine. Like some people prefer to just what's the word for it, like snack essentially, and not too worried about finishing games. Like is that necessary for people? There's certain games where I don't think it is necessary, but my preference is usually to just to finish stuff. So I think that's why even if I do have something that drops for something else, I'll always try and come back to it and finish it, because I do want to, and I do want to get that kind of final thought on it essentially. So
I have to, like I said, I've got fewer gameplay hours, so I'm often quite a lot stricter about what I'm playing, and I used to be way stricter. So I used to have like, these are the games I intend to play and this is my list.
But I would order them in a list and would be like, I'm not allowed to play Warrior Land Shake It until I've played the Swapper.
I'm not allowed to play that until I've played this other one. And it was this weird, like, no, I said I'd play this. I have to play it. And like, I need to hold myself to that. And I think that was just taking it a little bit too far. And I think over the years, I've kind of come to this system that I'm really, I've been using this system now for the last 5 years, roughly since the pandemic, and I've been absolutely loving it. So my current system, and I explained this recently on the bonus bits, but I essentially take a list of games that are probably going to come out this year, and these are games that I'm interested in. And then when a game has a release date, I'll put it right at the top of the list with its release date. So at the moment, there are only 3 games coming out this year that I'm interested in that actually have a release date. So those are Mario Kart World June 8th, DK Bonanza July 17th, and Ghost of Yotei October 2nd. So I know that until June 8th, I can play what I want. And then after that, I know I can play what I want until July 17th. So I have like these windows in my mind of like, right, I've got this time to play this game before there's a game coming out that I want to play day one. So after the games that are listed as like already have dates, I've got a list of games that I think are coming out this year that don't have dates. So those are games like Hades 2, Metroid Prime 4, Sword of the Sea, Hollow Knight Silksong, and those games will then get pushed up into the top list once they have a date. But that's all designed for a Game of the Year discussion. Like that's in terms of like, these are the games I'm interested in to come out this year. And what I do is that if a game comes along and is really interesting and sounds cool, and I'm like, I might try that at some point, I have what's called like just a substitutes list. So this is just subs of games that have come out this year I'm vaguely interested in. I might try and play this year, I might try and play in years to come, or I might never get around to. And I don't hold myself too hard on ever getting around to these. These are just games I'm quite interested in. So at the moment, my subs list for this year is you've converted me, MZ, the 100-line Last Defense Academy. Like I've just,
oh, really? Okay.
I've stuck it in this list. It's not just, I'm still want to play Danganronpa first in those games, but I want to play that probably at some point if I enjoyed those. And then games from this year were also like Keep Driving. I'm vaguely interested in that. Star of Providence. That's like a it's not like
that's a Donkey published one, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. It's like a space shooter. What do you call it?
Roguelike kind of thing.
Shooter, space shooter. Anyway, my point is, and then I order those. So by the end of this year, I will have amassed a document that will have a subs list of games that I never got around to this year that I might like to try at some point. And I keep a list of that I've done that for the last 5 years. So I've got documents upon documents that just have lists of games and games and games that I keep on my subs list. And what I do with these subs lists is I might be like, oh, Keep Driving is a cool game. I'll stick that on my Steam wish list, and I'll stick that on like my wish list on Deku Deals. And I'll just it'll be on my radar, because what I do alongside games coming out this year is I have a list of games that I own that didn't come out this year that I'm ready to play, because this is predominantly used to save money, because I can't just always be buying and playing the newest, hottest, latest, but I also want to always have the ability to play old games, because like Game of the Year that didn't come out this year is actually a really big part of the show, for the simple reason that we love playing old games as well as new games. And I hate the hammer being held over you, the idea that you have to play new games when they come out, and that's what lots of professional podcasts do, obviously, but we love to like talk about older games. So I always have a list of games that I own, and this is where I use how long to beat, and I'll stick the length of each game next to it, and I've even ordered these games in terms of how long they are. So the shortest game on my list at the moment is Little Gator Game. I've got On Guard, Katamari Damacy Reroll, so those are like 5.5 hours, 5.5 hours. And then what I do is I'll rotate between playing new releases, and then when I have those windows, like I said, I've got a window until June the 8th. I mean, like I said in the first segment, that's going to be taken up by Clair Obscur this occasion. But if I get a window, like I'm going on holiday to Turkey, I'm probably going to play something like Little Gator Game, because it's like a window to play that game. So this list is always made up of subs from previous years, because then I can just like go to any list from a previous year. Just going to open one up now, and then I can go so I've got a folder called Bally Games Played, and then I can go to 2024 Bally Games Played, and the subs I've got from last year are Nico de Rico. So that's a game, for example, that's on my wish list. Like I'm waiting for that game to go on sale, then I'll buy it. Dragon Quest III Remake, 1000 Times Resist, Space Marine 2, Paper Mario 1000 Year Door, and loads and there's a bunch of others, but those are like the top 6. So I always have like subs that I'm aware of that, and this is where kind of was it Flapjack who made the point where like how do you keep things staying fresh? And that's what I give myself with this system is I've got a long list of games I can choose from when I have these gaps of games that I'm playing from previous years. So I'm always able to be like, what am I in the mood for? Like I don't, Gumbrella, I might fancy Gumbrella. Let's play that. It's a 7-hour game. Let's just play that. And it's kind of like, it's a way of staying on top of releases in recent years. I'm doing it cheaply because I'm buying these games almost 100% on sale. There are exceptions sometimes. But on top of that, I'm still planning to play at least 10 games to make up a Game of the Year list. So this is a way of essentially playing minimum 20 games, 10 old, 10 new, to make those two lists, hopefully play a few more than those to make those lists even stronger. And ultimately, I'm always playing something I'm interested in because I'm picking it, and I'm not forcing myself to always, play a list of games that I'm not that interested in. I'm always vaguely interested, and I think that's the mistake I was making before. Was I'd make my backlog list was quite fixed and rigid, whereas at the moment,
quite rigid. Yeah,
I create like a smorgasbord of things I'm interested in, and predominantly made up of games from recent years that I never got round to, like 1000 Times Resist, for example. Like I want to play that game at some point this year, and it's
also a mood thing as well, right? Like you might not be in the mood for like a narrative thing. You might be in the mood for like, I just want to run around and hit things.
Yeah.
Like it allows you that space to be like, oh, okay, well, I've got this on here, and that would fit my current what I want to be checking out.
Exactly. And in my mind, my backlog is not games I own. My backlog is games I want to play. So like this games on the subs lists are predominantly games I don't own, and that's fine. But when I think I might want to play that soon, I'll make sure it's on, a wish list or something, and I'm monitoring for like a sale. But ultimately, I'm monitoring lots of games at once so that I'm always catching the best sales. But that also allows me to add a multitude of games to my smorgasbord, essentially. And it gives me a wider choice of games to pick when I'm like, let's play something old. I've got this window before, let's say, Mario Kart comes out, Switch 2 launches. Let's play something old. It just gives me a wider choice. So what you have to do with my system is never beat yourself up for not playing through all of your substitute games. You just accept that it's an unlimited list, and you're always going to be playing the game on the top.
It's also going to grow forever, and it's never going to run out, really. So it's like, yeah,
you're gonna kill yourself if you think you're ever going to beat everything on your subs list. Even if you're MBZ and playing 800 hours a year, like you're still, my system would still not, you're still not going to play everything ever, but you're always going to play. It's my way of keeping on top of the stuff I'm interested in, and the best stuff ultimately for my taste.
Yeah, and I think because you have limited time as well, like you never want to be, there are so many 10 out of 10 games these days that like playing a 7 or a 6 out of 10 is just you never want to do that to yourself. And I think sometimes that's tricky because I think, look, not that I'm calling Rebirth a 7 or a 6 out of 10 game, but it certainly took up a huge chunk of your year gaming hours wise.
It did.
And probably in terms of satisfaction maybe wasn't like accounted for in that way. And so
and that's one thing that I'm very aware of with this list, is I'm always thinking about how long to beat and how long these games are. And I've decided at this point in my life I can beat one long game a year. I define a long game as 60 plus hours. So last year it was Rebirth. This year my long game is Witcher 3. I'm only 20 hours in, but I will not suddenly pick up Persona 5 this year, for example. I can't, I'm not going to ever pick up a game that's over 60 hours long. Now, I guess Ghost of Yotei is quite long. It's not going to be 60 hours, hopefully. But my point is, it just makes me feel better knowing I've got one long game, and then when I have time, I'm going to chip away at that game. That I don't need to drag other games and start a million things. Because there is a thrill to starting games and playing more games and adding more to you, and it stresses me out seeing how many games MZ often has on the go on his backloggery. And this list, I feel, it gives me that thrill of playing new stuff fairly frequently, because I can control if I play more new stuff. All I have to do is start playing shorter games. My list works for me. I don't think it's for everyone, but I think when you're time limited and ultimately you're trying to produce a Game of the Year list, and a Game of the Year that didn't come out this year, this for me is the best method, and it gives you variety. It keeps it keeps the release dates in your mind of like when stuff's coming, and kind of I've got a number of games on the horizon that I'm interested in, that I'm looking out for release dates for. Like the second Ghost of Yotei got a date. It was already in this bottom group, and then I just moved it up to the top group when it got October 2nd. And anyway.
I think it also it does leave you room to do a Zeitgeist thing like you have with Expedition 33,
exactly.
right? Like that is the reason you're playing. That is a Zeitgeist thing, right?
Totally.
I think, and I think that's good, because ultimately, if your goal is to make a list for best games this year, that counts for that. So it's a nice thing to have there, but also it lets you be part of the conversation if you want to, and like things like Max's Deepest Dive
exactly.
is another incentive for playing it at the time, being part of the conversation, that sort of thing.
It's probably booted off a game that's coming out this year that I would have played later in the year. But that's totally fine, because this game turns out to be better than that hypothetical game, and I think you always need flexibility. And to Flapjackal's point, that's how you always stay. You should always be having fun playing video games. The second you're not having fun, like, what are you doing? Like, this is meant to be a fun hobby. And
yes and no. I think for me, because I'm just interested in games as a medium so deeply that, and I also have a lot more time than you do to like dig into this stuff. I am much more able to be like, okay, this game's a 7, I'll still finish it. Like the Gunk is a great example. The Gunk is maybe the most 6 out of 10 game of all time, and like it's not that long, it's like 5-6 hours, but I spent some time over a Christmas playing all the way through the Gunk. Should I have played all the way through the Gunk? Probably not. I probably figured out what it was within the first hour, and the rest of it was just getting through it. But there are moments like that when that happens, but then there's also moments of like, I know I should drop this because I'm just not enjoying it. I know it's going to be too long and it's just not my thing. And that definitely happened with other games as well. And I think I'm definitely getting a bit better about doing that. There's certain games where I'm just like, I'm gonna DNF it. I'm just gonna not finish, and I'm just gonna let it sit there, which is fine. And that definitely happens with certain ones. But I am more willing to play a interesting weird 7 out of 10 just to understand it a bit more and to kind of get an idea of like, what did people think of it at the time, or is it a thing that I should have in part of my my repertoire of just understanding games a bit better. So
I also think for very long games that can still be very fun, it can still feel a little bit like a chore sometimes to get back into them, even if they're really strong games, whether that's Elden Ring or Witcher 3 or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I had to get back into numerous times last year. Like it's there is a bit of hardiness you need to like
just lose momentum, don't you?
You gotta commit if you're gonna beat this thing, especially in the course of a year. You're not playing it over 3 years or something. I mean, sometimes we do, but like I think that it is harder to beat long games and does require a bit of grit. I'll definitely admit that.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of burnout, like, I don't know that I've dealt with video game burnout, and that might be a weird thing to say, but I don't know. There's definitely times where I'm playing games and I'm just playing games, and it's like, okay, I'm playing this thing, but it's not like speaking to me that deeply. I'm just kind of going through the motions a little bit, but I don't know if that's burnout, and it's more the kind of the Jeff Gersman effect of like, I've played so much at this point, I know so much that a game needs to be super special to like rock me and to be like, this is why Expedition 33.
I think burnout is, I don't even want to pick up this game in the first place. It's not necessarily like I'm playing this game and it's not inspiring me.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think that's why Expedition 33 is like energized me so much, because it's like the first time in a while for a new game where it's been like, fuck, dude, this is why I play video games. This is why I love this stuff, you know? Like, it's really, like, hammered that home. And that happens fewer and fewer times each year, right? Like, I think both with old games and with new games. I think Nine Souls is a great example of an old game where I'm like, holy shit, I should have played this early. This game fucking rules, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
and we say old game, it's still only 1 year old, but in this definition, it counts as old because it's not this year for our discussions.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think that's... It's special when those moments happen for me, because it reminds me why I do this, like why I love this so much. Like Neon White last year, I was like, I'm an idiot. Why didn't I play this that year? This game is fucking incredible, you know? And like being expletive about it, like that reaction for me is why I still, you know, I still go through it, because it makes the special ones more special. Like if I play 50 games in a year and only 3 of them like really like stand out to me, it makes them a bit more special in that way, because it's like they've stood out from like a large group of stuff essentially. So it's interesting. But
I think we've said before on the show about a famous time I was having just a bit of gaming funk. I don't even know what caused it. It was just like when I was living in Brussels, and
I remember you started a bunch of stuff. You started Majora's Mask,
totally.
and you started Metro Prime 3, and
I think my systems help me avoid gaming funk, because they keep you focused while still giving you the ability to play different, unusual stuff. And so I think my systems help avoid gaming funk or burnout. But I do think if you have burnout, my personal solution is to play a short, impactful game. I think famously, we talked about Brothers. When I first played Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, way back in, I don't want to say 2016,
like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, at least.
At least. But so I think play a short, impactful game. It doesn't really matter what genre. It just kind of depends on what your tastes are. But I think make sure it's short, because for me personally, getting that satisfaction of, I beat a thing. I did it. Like I completed a thing. I feel whole, you know, from completing things. That sense of satisfaction.
It's gamifying your gaming, right? Which is something that we do a lot of, which is make lists. Like me, I have like 12 lists on 12 different websites, and you know, every time I finish a game, it's a ritual of like, do this, post it to social media, then I go and tick it off here. I put it on my Reset Era thread. I like there's a ritual to it.
Yes.
There's a formality to it, and then you look at that. And like, you know, I was showing some colleagues my list today. I was like, oh, and this is what I played this year, and I'm just going through it. And it's nice to have that, to be like, and here's like a timeline of like when I played it, what I thought of it, all that sort of stuff. I think it's just gamifying your gaming is a fun thing to do. I think, and it helps with
definitely another way of avoiding burnout.
Yes, exactly.
Don't start too many things at the same time if you can't finish them, is what I would personally do, but everyone is different. Because
exactly.
Emiz's not getting any burnout, and he's started like 12 things at once. So, you know, but equally, you said you felt a bit guilty about not beating something. So it's
and I think you know, for me, stuff like backloggery, I almost use that as a reminder to myself that I need to get back to this thing, as opposed to, because there's a section where you can be like currently playing, right? And usually if you look at that on my profile, I'm not playing any of those games. I just have them there to remind myself that I started it and I'm in the middle of it, and I should go back and finish it, basically.
You don't actually have any like separate Word document or spreadsheet that lists any of your games. Like, it's all backloggery.
Yeah.
And that's it, right?
Well, so I did start a Google Drive list of every time I finish a game.
Oh, okay.
I separate it into old games, new games. So I have two lists.
Okay, so you
built
do
throughout
have
the year.
that. Is that predominantly for GOTY discussions though, or
Yes.
would you have done? Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's mainly for that, just so that like if I beat an old game, it goes in the old game column, and if I beat a new game, it goes in the new game column.
Yeah, I've got the same at the bottom of my list. If you beat a game, it's old and new. Yeah.
Exactly, and then what I do is I copy that list, and before our GOTY to COTY episode, I'll go through and create my list from that big list, and same with the Game of the Year one as well. So that's the main thing I do for tracking it individually. But yeah, usually I just track it on all these other websites, and I have different approaches for each of them, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like video game burnout just hasn't happened to me, and I don't know, maybe I'm just broken. Like 90% of my life is video games. Like I work in video games, I do it as a hobby, like we do this podcast. So if I'm not burning out at that point, I don't think I ever will. Like it's kind of, it's a lot at this point, so it's hard to feel that way.
But good questions. Hope you don't get video game burnout. Hope everyone has a system that works for them to play the games they want to play in a way that makes them feel good, because it can be difficult, and it can definitely be overwhelming, and I think it took me a good number of years to get to the position I've got myself in.
Right, and ultimately you need to step back and be like, why am I playing video games? Right?
Yes.
What's the reason? It's because I enjoy them, and I enjoy the hobby, and it's fun for me to do. And so if it ever becomes not fun, then you have to step back and be like, okay, why? What am I doing here? So yeah.
Our next email is from Tim from Wisconsin. Says, "Hey guys, the new Indiana Jones.
Love Indiana James, my favorite character.
Game got me thinking about IP games. Nowadays, valuable IP is treated with a bit more budget. I don't want to say more care, that's not always true. But back when we were growing up, it was the heyday of cheap movie tie-ins. But even amongst the slop, there were some real gems, plus plenty of nostalgic games that don't hold up. So what are your favorite old IP games, and do you think there would be any market for these games if they still got made today? Personally, I have fond memories of Revenge of the Sith, Two Towers and Return of the King, all very fun hack and slash style games. I also had Return of the King on GBA, which was a completely different game, a pretty complex looter RPG with multiple campaigns for different characters. I also remember Shrek Super Party on PlayStation 2, Cheap Mario Party ripoff, and Shrek 2 on GameCube. Surprisingly solid. I'm sure there's plenty more that I'm forgetting, but those are the first to come to mind. Cheers, Tim from Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's
a good question.
So it's a different era these days for sure. Like, I think it's a better era in some ways, right? Like, I think IPs are being given to really qualified studios who have made good video games and are being treated less as tie-ins to specific movies or TV shows or like marketing beats, but more like standing on their own as their own IP and being able to do their own thing, right? Like, Indiana Jones is essentially an entire story of its own right that's just been essentially created by Machine Games, and it has no tie to the wider marketing of the franchise and all that sort of stuff. Of like, it's not tying into the 6th Indiana Jones film or something. It's like, it's its own thing, it's doing its own thing. I think that's the best way you can handle it, and I appreciate that has been happening these days. Now, are we in an era where we are overwhelmed with everyone's just making Marvel and Star Wars things? Yes, obviously, of course, and that's happening in games as much as it is in movies.
It's kind of a blessing that sheer number of films, take Marvel for example, doesn't have a movie tie-in every film. That would be insane.
It would be, imagine if the MCU was big during the GBA era. They would be shitting games out left, right, and center. It would be unbelievable.
But I know for a fact, I mean, Bally Jr. is too young to be into Marvel. He's more into, well, I guess he is into Spider-Man. Like, there's a very junior, like, Spider-Man on show on Disney Plus that he does really like. I know for a fact he would just, like, if there was a game that just tied into that show, he'd be so keen on that versus me trying to get him into like Mario or Astrobot or something. Right. Like, there's definitely a clout to these brands that just works on kids. So I'm kind of surprised they don't exist in the same way they did, because it feels like a bit of an obvious cash grab, and I wouldn't be surprised if it came back again in the future, honestly.
I do wonder if most of these things happen on mobile these days, of like most
True,
kids are
yeah.
on iPads, and so Paw Patrol, I love that. Oh, there's a mobile app I can download with Paw Patrol stuff, and it's shit, and it's got microtransactions.
And most of these apps have like monthly costs to them. It's actually insane. It's like, oh my god, like the idea of subscribing to a Paw Patrol app just so Bally Jr. can access it. He also does love Paw Patrol, so that does terrify me.
Yeah. I think there was a Paw Patrol video game that came out recently. So I think
there's a handful. One of them is good, and the other two are less good, according to Jeff Grossman.
Interesting.
But
yeah, curious. So I think in the kids space there is a little bit of this going on still, of like people trying to make quick money off of it, because kids, as you said, are going to be very insistent of like, I watched that, I like that, please dad buy that for me, so a lot of parents, I'm sure, have been suckered into buying terrible video games.
It's hard to say no.
It's
very hard to say.
It's very hard. Yeah, exactly. You want to make them happy, so I get it. But yeah, there are definitely good IP games from this era that we played a few of for sure, and some that were definitely quite memorable. I mean, those Lord of the Rings games were great, honestly. Two Towers and Return of the King.
They were very good. I had Two Towers on GameCube. That was a very good game.
Yeah, and I remember playing Return of the King on my cousin's PS2 one Christmas, and just like it just well put together, right? And it wasn't strictly sticking to the movie in terms of like the narrative or whatever. Like you had a boss fight against the Witch King and stuff like that, but I think it still covered most of the beats they needed to hit, while making its own thing and making it a bit unique. I think it's the ones that were very kind of like, well, we have to follow the plot of the thing exactly, and then we have to make these levels based around them, and they don't make any sense. I think those are the ones where you found some issues, basically.
Totally. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I really liked Star Wars Battle for Naboo on N64. That was a Factor 5 game, and they made great games. So that game, obviously, like, it did tie into episode 1. Episode 1 famously just had a bajillion games like linked to it, and this was one of them. But that game was so good. I think you actually got that game on my Steam Deck. I need to try it out, MBZ.
I'm pretty sure I'd loaded those up. Yeah,
so I definitely need to get back to that one. But that's a really good game. Again, it's a real shame that it's on Switch. You can play so many old Star Wars games, but the Factor 5 games just aren't part of that, which is a real shame. I really hope they can work that out at some point. Another couple from me: Simpsons Road Rage and Simpsons Hit and Run, both obviously Simpsons tie-ins.
Yes.
I think both of those games were very good in the moment. Road Rage was obviously just based on Crazy Taxi, and Hit and Run was GTA, but I think I had a great time with both those games.
I think also interesting, part of the reason they were probably quite good is that they weren't tied to specific things, right? Like Hit and Run was its own thing.
Right, so they probably had better development cycles, yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So it wasn't like tied into the Simpsons movie or the Simpsons like specific episodes or whatever. There's references all across those games, but neither of them had a specific beat they had to tie into, and so I think they were able to be a bit better as a result of that. So yeah.
A couple of Disney ones from me. Disney Sports Football. Like, this was just like someone in the boardroom basically said Mickey Mouse needs a soccer game, basically, and it was. I owned this on GameCube as well as Game Boy Advance, and it linked up with the link cable. I can't remember what it did when you linked them up, but it was just a very straightforward 11-a-side football game, basically, with, like, all the kind of Mickey Mouse and crew characters. So Pete and Donald and Goofy and were Donald and Goofy even there? Was it just Mickey Mouse? And I'm struggling to remember now, but
I don't think I've ever seen this game.
Really?
I know you have it and you owned it, but I don't think we ever played it when I went over to your house.
Really? Yeah.
So
I can't remember playing it with you. Yes, to be fair, one you will remember, and that I thought was okay in the moment, was Tarzan. And this was
I always think of Tarzan Bally. This is the one when this question came in. I was like, well, Bally's got to talk about that Tarzan game.
So what's interesting about this is we got a lot of like PC demos. So one of them was like the original Toy Story, and then a few years after that, the film Tarzan came out. I think it came out in 98 or 99, and there was this demo disc for this PC game, and I loved this level that it had. It was like platforming and doing all the kind of surfing thing that he does. It's got like the Phil Collins music. Like, I love that film, and it's great. And then I thought that this game was that game, and it wasn't that game. So what I mean by that is I played the PC demo, and I thought this was a GameCube version of that game, and it wasn't. It was something else that had like water skiing and like diving, and
it was mini games, wasn't it? It was a party game essentially. Yeah,
it was more mini game based. Yeah, whereas this other one was more pseudo platformer adventure game, and I was a bit gutted that it wasn't that game. I'm not even sure if that PC game ever came to GameCube. It might have just been PS2.
Yeah, maybe
I don't
not.
know. So this other one was less good. It was still fun in a kind of, we're very into Mario Party in that moment, and it was kind of like,
sure, yeah,
this is knockoff Mario Party in some ways. It's fun enough, but nowhere near as fun as that PC one level demo that I played was, basically. Right,
yeah, and I think then your mum returned it, and so we never saw hide of Tarzan again. He was lost forever.
Yeah, I definitely regret returning a few games when trying to do a clear out. Would not recommend. Keep your hard copy games, people. Keep them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those unfortunate things is that like I had my cousin's Amiga as a hand me down, and one day my mum just like was like, I'm gonna get rid of these, and unfortunately there's that period of time where I was like into games but not into games in that way, and it just,
you don't have your Amiga anymore.
No, I mean, so all the games and stuff and all of that is gone. Yeah, because it was given away to some charity, whatever. So I think because it was unfortunate timing, it was like right before I went to uni. It was like I was 16, 17, and so I was, playing things. I was mainly playing Pokemon and nothing else, and hadn't really developed that kind of interest in games and the history and stuff like that. If that had been a couple of years later, I would have been like, don't you fucking dare.
You were just like 2-3 years away from that, Weekend returns, what's it called?
Confirmed.
Weekend confirmed, yeah. I feel like that's the podcast that really opened up your eyes to like cross-platform, and
that and Giant Bomb, I think are both culprits in that way. And honestly, even RFN, like I think the interesting thing about RFN is that despite it being a Nintendo podcast, it actually opened my eyes to other platforms even more so, because they talked about general industry stuff and talked about other non-Nintendo games on that show. And so actually that was actually a big influence in terms of me expanding my interest in games as a medium a bit further. But so I don't think there were any licensed game on the Amiga, but I mean the one that always stands out to me is Jackie Chan Adventures on GBA. That we both had, which was,
you tried that like a couple of years ago, and you said it didn't hold up in the slightest.
No, unfortunately not. I think we don't really like side-scrolling beat 'em up, so it's kind of surprising that this was one of the games we were into as kids, because it is a classic side-scrolling beat 'em up.
I have such fond memories of that game. I'm so gutted it doesn't hold up.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure, again, I put it on your Steam Deck, so you can try it if you want, and I'm sure you'll remember all because we learned all the moves, right? There was the training dojo where you could like do all the inputs for the different moves, and it was pretty challenging. I remember quite vividly being at choir practice with you and telling you like, oh, I got to the 4th boss last night, because the 4th boss was like the 4th level with the nighttime stuff, and it was like a weird like vampire guy. Basically, this Jackie Chan game was based on the cartoon, the Jackie Chan Adventures cartoon. That was great. Really one of those really good shows that had Jackie Chan, but basically mythologized it, and so it was using a lot of Chinese mythology as part of that show, and so you're fighting like these creatures and things like that, and all those creatures from the episodes became bosses. Like the monsters of the week from the TV show were like levels based around them, and then they were like the final boss was fighting that thing, and it had a whole like, I think it was like a talisman that you collected all the stuff, and like it feels like the TV show was kind of custom built to be a video game, and it worked quite well in that way, I think. So it was great, and I think it looks quite good still to this day in terms of like visual fidelity. It was kind of like pseudo 3D on the GBA, which was well done, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. Obviously on PlayStation 1 I had quite a few licensed games as well. I think the best one of them was Toy Story 2 specifically. Actually a really good game. Like I very much enjoy that whole being tiny in a big world idea, and that's what Toy Story is about. Obviously, playing the game is like running around as Buzz and as Woody and doing all that sort of stuff. But Toy Story 2 is legitimately a great game on the PS1, and that one is one that I have fond memories of, and I think I would like to go back to actually and revisit one day. But going back to Star Wars, the Phantom Menace game on PlayStation 1 is again a classic in terms of it was basically the game where I learned what video game cheats were, and the only way I played that game was by using cheats. I never played it regularly.
It was a hard game.
It's very difficult. Like, I couldn't get past like the second level, the Gungan Swamp, and so I would often just turn on the cheats, go to the final level and kill Darth Maul, and that was basically what I did for most of that game. But there was also like the Tatooine level, and if you gave yourself God mode, you could go around just killing all the citizens in Tatooine. It was pretty brutal. Actually, I was kind of surprised back then how much control that game gave you. But
it's wild they let you just kill everyone on Tatooine.
Yeah, exactly. It was like GTA before GTA.
And we also played like Jedi Power Battles. That was another.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, great GBA Star Wars game. But no one can forget the greatest licensed game of all time, Mary Kate and Ashley's Horse Riding Adventures. Immortalized, of course, on my YouTube channel when Nick and I did a Let's Play of Mary Kate and Ashley, and we learned what jodhpurs were. That was a good time. Yeah, that was a game that my sister got bought for her, and you know what? It was all right. It was quite fun. You would go around on the horse and you do like obstacle course. There was like little open world areas you could explore. It was Nick always makes fun of me for it because we had a conversation once where I was like, "You guys had GTA growing up. I had Mary Kate and Ashley's Horse Riding Adventures," and so he always like brings that up as a point of like, "Oh yeah, that was your GTA was Mary Kate and Ashley." So that's another one. And then I think one that I actually enjoyed quite a bit, but was another TV show tie-in, was the Game Boy Sabrina game, Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
I've literally written that down. That was like your family's entrance into video games, at least for your sister and yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there was that, but there was also the that James Jones has talked about quite recently on RFN because they re-released it on the Switch Online service. Quest for Camelot, a game that is seemingly a piece of shit, like is garbage, but I didn't realize that it was a bad game at the time. I just thought I was bad at video games, which is an often thing that happens when you're a kid. It's like, you don't know the difference, and so you're like, oh, maybe I'm just not good at it. And yeah, apparently that game is just terrible. James is talking about it quite a lot on our friend about how bad it is, but that was the first game my sister had for our Game Boy, and we never got very far in it. It's like a Zelda-like game, but just very bad, and it's based on the animated movie Quest for Camelot, basically.
Right.
But Sabrina was a similar situation where it was the animated TV version of Sabrina, because Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the live action show, was a big deal, and I watched a bunch of that as a kid as well. We both did. But then they did a spin-off of the live action Sabrina Teenage Witch as a animated show, I believe.
Right.
So that's what that was based on, I want to say. So that was good fun. And in fact, I found out years later that game was made by Way Forward, people who made Shantae, and looking back on it, you look at that game and you're like,
it's got a lot of Shantae energy.
It's just Shantae. That entire game is Shantae. It's kind of crazy looking back on it. So yeah, that one actually is pretty good. I think it might be the first video game I ever beat was Sabrina on Game Boy Color, because like I actually got to the end of it and like finished it and everything. So a very cool, interesting game, kind of like a puzzle platformer essentially. But yeah. So yeah,
you're forgetting Hercules. You had on your dad's PC.
Oh, of course. Oh, loved Hercules. That was a great game. Yeah, so had the PC version of that. There was a PS1 version that I never owned, but I could never get past like late in the first the first level is pretty challenging, and there's this section where there are centaurs in the background throwing rocks at the foreground, and I specifically remember this section with like 3 centaurs and they keep throwing rocks, and I just could never get through it. Like I just got stuck there constantly.
But you're playing this with like directional buttons on the keyboard, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah. Obviously I have no proper control, and also I'm using like a little nub thing because my dad's old laptop didn't have a proper
the IMB ones. Yeah, they're just
didn't have like a proper even a.
How did that nub take off on that laptop? Everyone had one. It's ridiculous that people use that instead of a mouse.
Well, you know, Nintendo decided to do that for the Nintendo 3DS, as we all remember, so it lives on in spirit. But yeah, like didn't have a traditional even mouse trackpad on that laptop. It was this tiny nub that controlled the mouse. Thankfully for Hercules, you didn't need to use the mouse. It was just, buttons and the space button to jump and all that sort of stuff. But I remember specifically, the only way I could play another level of Hercules was because on the back of the box there was a code, because it was the days when you would input codes for levels to go to levels, and so there was no saving of anything. You just have to remember the code and write it down, and that would be your save system. And there was a code on the back of the box that let me go to a later level, which was when people are attacking the city, there's the giant guys in the background, but it was essentially like a Crash Bandicoot level where you were running forward into the foreground as things were coming at you. It was almost like an original kind of Endless Runner take on that kind of gameplay. And that was the only other level I could play. And it was like level 7 or something. So I basically played level 1 and level 7. I really need to go back to that game and try and replay it.
Well, this wasn't a time where we would just Google codes for, like, that wasn't really a thing. We got these codes from the back of a box, or like a magazine. Like famously, Jedi Power Battles VMT3BYJ was from some magazine, and that code lets you play any level as Qui-Gon Jinn or play as Darth Maul.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, that was a time when we just kind of did whatever was there, and
we're forgetting the strongest movie game tie-in that either of us played. Full stop.
Okay.
Is Spider-Man 2.
Oh, of course, yes, the classic.
I remember playing that like a whole day at my house with you, and then we like went to your house for a sleepover and just played it like all evening, and it was like this freedom of. We were just running around the world. Still never beaten the final boss in that game of Doc Ock.
Well, I think we got to the final boss, right? Like we actually made a lot of progress. I remember specifically the amount of time we spent trying to get on the helicopter to get to the Statue of Liberty.
Yes.
That was like a whole 3 hours of us like fucking around trying to do that and just never being able to do it. But it was just like the freedom of it, right? It was just like, oh my god, we can explore everything. And again,
it just had such a good swing system, and obviously Insomniac have absolutely nailed those games. But the swing system was just phenomenal for this game.
It was wild, yeah. And and again, we were Nintendo boys. We never played Grand Theft Auto. At least we didn't own it. I definitely played it at friends' houses.
No, and this was on GameCube.
Yeah, and so this was essentially our GTA in a way of like, oh my god, an open world to explore. And like I think that's why we were so infatuated with the idea of going to the Statue of Liberty, because it was essentially, wow, we can actually do this. Like there was a freedom to it of like, wow, we can make this happen if we time it right, and we can get on this helicopter and we'll break the bounds. It felt like breaking the game almost, which was very fun.
And then 3 more very quickly. Revenge of the Sith on 3DS. DS. Really enjoyed it as another beat 'em up. I'm sure it's probably not aged that well, but again, in the moment, it felt even better than Jackie Chan. It was a very good beat 'em up. Monsters Inc. I owned on both the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
I just bounced off those games massive. I think you were a lot better. Sabrina's a good example, but now that I know that it's made by Way Forward, maybe that explains why it was such a buttery smooth experience compared to Monsters Inc. But yeah, this was just an awful game to play. Did not get very far in that game. And then I owned, this was brought up on, I cannot remember the podcast. It was brought up really recently on the podcast we listened to. James Bond for the original Game Boy Classic. I owned this game.
Wow.
And it was like this kind of top-down Zelda RPG kind of thing. And I needed some key for some house and could not get further. And I don't know how I could have gotten any further, but there you go. And then I played another bunch of Spider-Man games. I had like some Spider-Man game on Game Boy Color that I lost that was very good 2D swinging, which I enjoyed. And then I also owned a Spider-Man game on the PC, which I think was also on PlayStation 1. So yeah, that's why I was kind of so into Spider-Man 2 when it came out. Yeah, but
yes,
just jogging my memory, and so many of these I would just dip in, get stuck, and never play them again, kind of thing.
And bail out.
That's just how I gamed back then. It was weird.
Of course, yeah. When you're a kid, you're just doing whatever kind of catches your attention, and your attention is so limited, kind of like split in all directions that there's so many different things you can do. I there's another GBA game that I played, which was a few years later, but my cousins had The Incredibles on GBA, and I remember they came round. We're at my grandparents' house, and everyone was there. And in an entire afternoon, I just beat the entire Incredibles game. I just started it and finished it in like 3 hours or something. But I just sat there on their GBA, just playing that whole thing. So I don't remember anything about it, but I remember I did that, and that was quite memorable. And then, I don't want to invoke the name because this is a fuck J.K. Rowling podcast because she's a piece of shit. But there was a Harry Potter Philosopher's Stone game on Game Boy that was actually quite cool because it was basically a turn-based RPG. Like, it was essentially a Final Fantasy game, but based on the first movie, and was pretty unique in that way. And it was definitely, because I remember, I think you had the GBA,
which was
because there was a
less
GBA
good,
game and a Game Boy game. The GBA game was much worse than the Game Boy game, which was far more interesting.
I remember going into like a room and then like using some spell, and someone was like, Gryffindor minus 10 points. I was like, whoa. And then I did it again, minus 10 points. Like, wow, you've lost 20. You just like lose points by doing bad shit in that game.
Oh god, yeah, that's not great, not fun at all, unfortunately.
Weird.
But yeah, there's a lot of memories being unearthed when you kind of get into this. It's like, oh yeah, there's so many.
Yes, yeah. Once I thought of 5, I thought like another 5 more, and once I thought of those 5, I thought like another 5 more. Just keep going. But
unfortunately, I haven't tracked all my PlayStation games on my backloggery, so a lot of it is just like triggering memories. Like, what do I own? I did make a video when I was back home in Edinburgh a few years ago that's on my YouTube channel of going through my PlayStation 1 game collection. So I think if I looked at that, I could remember what I had there. But there's quite a lot.
Very good question, Tim. It's fun to jog on memories and think back.
Absolutely.
It's been such a long time since we played these games. Clair Obscur has reminded us of our age, as we were saying before. But yeah.
Oh my god.
But yeah, that's all the emails we've got for this episode. If you would like to send an email into the show, please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. Like I said at the top of the segment, there's a channel in our Discord server called Emails. You can post over in there.
Lovely. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks everybody for listening. You can obviously find us in various places across the internet, and you can support the show directly by going to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife. You can get bonus episodes and fun stuff. Bally would like to thank some of our patrons.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier plus patrons. They are Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK, Alan, Turtle, Orange Thunder, and Ali T. Thank you all for your support, but also thank you to all of our other patrons. We really, really appreciate all the support that you give this show. Yeah,
absolutely. You can obviously find us on the internet. You can find me at NBZ on Blue Sky. Where can they find you, Bally?
I'm at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91 on Blue Sky.
You can find us, the podcast, Blue Sky as well, at TNL Podcast. So go over there and follow us on that. You can obviously find the show in various places across the internet. Stitcher, you can download us to podcasting apps, Spotify, all that good nonsense. Go review us, all that fun stuff. That very much helps, so we do appreciate it if you do. But that's gonna do it, I think. We'll be back next time for our final show before the Switch 2 ? Is that
really?
true?
What?
Is that true?
No? What?
I think it's
really?
not true. I think it's not true. It might have been true, but we're very close. So
no,
this comes out on the 5th of May. Then there's the 19th, and then the 2nd of June. Yes. But I don't know, we might have a situation where we are delaying that one potentially based on travel and things like that.
Yes,
but that's a whole thing that we need to figure out in the background.
I'm about to go on holiday, so
yes,
look forward to that.
Yeah. Great. Well, that's going to do us. Thanks everybody so much for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with some more of this nonsense talking about video games and Nintendo. Till then, thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Bye bye. The musical interlude used on today's episode was Le Lumière from Clair Obscur Expedition 33, copyright Sandfall Interactive 2025.